Welcome to a new planetary and seismic update. You look at the SGI graph from the previous time frame with the planetary peaks, right angle geometry with Venus here on the 11th, and then we had the lunar geometry with Saturn, Neptune, followed by the lunar peak with Mars on the 13th, 14th, and we had a convergence around the time of new moon. You can look up the details in the previous update. Let's have a look at the seismic activity that we had. Initially, some stronger earthquakes related to the geometry prior to that time frame. We had the right angle geometry here with Venus, Mercury and Uranus, and then we had Mercury, Venus, Uranus. They all come in pairs, and we see some increased seismic activity there. Minimal temporal clustering 5.6, 5.7 on the 12th. Then we had the lunar geometry, and that's always the time to be on extra alert for this temporal clustering, stronger earthquakes, and that indeed started here with a 6.2 in the Banda Sea. Also, Mercury, Sun and Earth were in alignment here on the 14th. Right in between the two lunar peaks, and then we see a bunch of stronger earthquakes peaking 6.7 near the east coast of Honshu, Japan. We actually had 3 magnitude 6 earthquakes within 24 hours, and this is well above average. They come in clusters, they don't occur evenly, we keep that in mind. And here's the new moon and additional stronger earthquakes, 5.7 Solomon Islands and 5.7 on Kuril Islands. And then seismic activity quieted down here on the 18th, where we could have seen stronger seismic activity also because of the lunar peak at the time of new moon. So far that didn't happen except for 5.7 at Vanuatu this morning. So let's have a look at the next time frame. Here we see Earth, Moon, Venus. That was this morning. We had the 5.7 right here. Then we're going to have again right angle geometry with Venus, this time with Earth and Neptune. Equally, maybe even more critical than Venus, Mercury, Uranus combinations. They are the two most critical ones, Venus, Mercury, Uranus and Venus, Earth, Neptune. And that happens early on the 20th, that's tomorrow morning, immediately followed by Earth, Moon, Jupiter right there on the 20th. And we could see a seismic response there around the 21st, maybe on the 20th already, maybe the typical clustering of stronger earthquakes, maybe a single larger earthquake. That is definitely possible. It depends on the stress levels in Earth's crust, what the seismic response is going to be. We have quite a convergence on the 22nd. That's when Earth aligns with the Sun and Uranus. I briefly discussed it in the previous update. And sometimes we can have really large earthquakes with that kind of planetary geometry when Earth aligns with the Sun and Uranus. We have semi-right angle geometry, lunar geometry with Venus and Neptune also on the 22nd. Venus, Earth, Saturn in a right angle. Again, Venus at the right angle with Earth involved here. And Earth, Venus, Neptune at the right angle. That one pairs directly with this one. They always come in pairs, and that's because Venus, Earth move close to the Sun, relatively close compared to Neptune, very far away. Here we have that right angle geometry, Venus making a right angle with Earth and with Neptune. That's on the 20th. And we have also Earth, Moon, Jupiter on the 20th. That's directly follows on the right angle with Venus. And then we have this convergence on the 22nd, and if we look at that geometry, here is Earth making a right angle now with Venus and with Neptune, and also we have the right angle geometry now with Venus, Earth and with Saturn, and also Earth in alignment with the Sun and with Uranus. This is pretty interesting geometry, potentially critical, and we also see the same right angle geometry with the moon here, 45 degrees with Venus and 135 degrees with Neptune, practically at the same time. There's only some 15-20 minutes in between right there. So quite a convergence of geometry. Is it the most critical geometry? I don't know. It also depends on the stress levels in Earth's crust. The most significant alignment here is Earth with the Sun and with Uranus, and indeed sometimes we can have a pretty large seismic event as a result. Then we're going to have planetary alignments coming up, quite a few here. Mercury with Mars and Neptune, that is on the 24th. And then we have Sun, Mercury, Jupiter on the 25th, 24 hours later. And also a right angle geometry, Mercury making a right angle with Venus and Earth. And then we have the first lunar peak because the moon is in opposition there with Neptune. And again, here in the solar system, we see that Sun, Mercury and Jupiter in an alignment. We have Mercury, Mars and Neptune coming up in an alignment. We also have Sun, Mercury, Jupiter. I already said that one there. Mercury, Venus and Earth making a right angle. Here we see Mercury making the right angle with Venus and with Earth, and also the moon in an opposition with Neptune. This is also, we have quite some conversions coming up in the time frame here. And then we have the lunar peaks, like I said, Neptune, then Moon in opposition with Saturn on the 20th. And when we see these green peaks, we have to be on extra alert for the typical temporal clustering of strong earthquakes. We could very well see seismic activity above average in this time frame. Then, at the end, we have a convergence, and this is extremely rare geometry. I emphasize this, extremely rare. We have Mercury, Mars, Saturn in an alignment, and I prefer to call them floating alignments because they are not heliocentric. I mean, Mercury and Venus, they revolve around the Sun pretty fast. They are close to the Sun, have a high orbital velocity, so they make alignments with outer planets relatively often. Floating alignments, they do not involve the Sun. They are left to the Sun or right to the Sun, and when they don't happen very often, they are more rare. But when we have a convergence of two of these alignments, that is extremely rare, and we can have pretty large earthquakes with that kind of geometry. And on the 27th, 28th, we have two alignments converging. Like I said, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, and almost at the same time that Venus aligns with Mars and Neptune, and then immediately followed by an opposition of the Moon with Mars as well. Let's have a look at the solar system, because this is such unique and extremely rare geometry. Again, we have Venus with Mars and Neptune in alignment. We have Mercury, Mars and Saturn in alignment. And then several hours later, the Moon in an opposition with Mars, while Mars here is in the crosshairs. If we look at the largest earthquakes on the record, they often occur with these floating alignments whereby the Sun is not directly involved. These are alignments just between the planets. And when we have, we have Saturn and Neptune, and they are in the same region of space, which happens only every 36 years. That's number one. Then we have Mars at the right position between Venus and Mercury that happen to be on the other side. And then the Moon at the right position to make this opposition with Mars. Think about that. Extremely rare. So if you look at the solar system, at the SSGI graph, we could see a really large seismic event, potentially, it depends on the stress levels in Earth's crust, around the 29th, give or take 1 day. That is a possibility. And it depends on the stress levels in Earth's crust. We don't know for sure if that's going to happen, but this is extremely rare and also very powerful geometry, especially because the Moon lines up with Mars several hours later. Keep that in mind. So overall, I do believe that we're going to have seismic activity above average in this time frame. Quite some convergence going on, especially starting on the 24th with several planetary alignments. These are the red peaks, and then there's the convergence here on the 27th, 28th. So, and on top of that, we have Earth, Sun, Uranus in alignment on the 22nd as part of a near quadruple conjunction. The other alignments occurred around the 16th, 17th, as I discussed in the previous update. So be on extra alert, especially here 27th, but also the convergence here on the 22nd, that could result in quite some seismic response. So be on extra alert. Check out the updates on the website and also in our social media. Stay safe everyone, and until next time.